In the last video, we put a game object on the screen and we learned how our positioning works. In this video, we're going to make that game object move using our keyboard. No physics, no gravity, no magic. Just numbers, input, and control. If you ever felt like movement was confusing or unpredictable, this video will clear that up. Before we write any code, let's ground this idea. Movement is just changing the position of values over time. If I increase the x value, our game object will move to the right. If I decrease the x value, the game object will move to the left. That's it. The keyboard just tells us when to change those numbers. Phaser gives us a built-in way to read our keyboard input. Inside our create method, we're going to set this up once. So if we do this, input.keyboard, we're going to do create cursor keys. This method is going to create an object that'll give us access to our arrow keys on our keyboard, as well as a few other keys. We're not moving anything yet, we're just preparing our input. Think of this like plugging in a controller. Now for this object, we'll need to keep track of it on our class, so we'll make a new property. So we're going to call this cursor keys, and then we'll set it equal to that object. Let's add that property to our class. So we've come to the top of our class, we'll add in cursor keys. Now here's an important concept. We don't listen for our key presses once, we want to check our keyboard every frame that our game is running. That's called input polling. To do that, we need to use our update method. Let's add that method to our class. Now if we remember, this method is going to be called once for every tick of our game loop, or once every frame. So inside this method, this is where we want to ask questions like, is the left key currently down? And then based on that answer, we'll change the numbers for our game objects. So in order to be able to update our game objects, we'll need to create a property to keep track of our player. So we'll do this.player. Let's add that to our class. So now to check for our input, we can do if our cursor keys. Then on this object, we're going to check our left property. This will be another object, and this has a property called isDown. This will tell us if that key is currently being pressed down when our update method runs. When this key is pressed down, we're going to update our X position for our player, and we're going to decrement it by a value. And now we'll do the same thing if our right key is being pressed down, we'll increase our X value. So now if we save, we come back over to our game, we press and hold our left or right keys, we'll see our game object is updated, and we can see our player move across our screen. So instead of hard-coding our movement value, we'll use a variable in our class. This number will represent how fast our player will be able to move. It's not pixels per second yet, just a value we control. This makes movement easier to tweak later by storing this as a property. So we come to the top of our class, we're going to call this player speed. Now to initialize our value, we're going to do this in our init method. So we'll do init, we'll do this.player speed equals 5. So to come back down to our code, we'll replace our hard-coded value, and we'll reference our player speed. So now our init method, this is tied to our phaser scene lifecycle. This works just like our other methods that we previously added, and this is one we haven't talked about yet. So when our phaser scene first gets created, Phaser will first call the init method to initialize our scene. It does this before it calls our preload method, and this method is useful for initializing any values and doing any setup we want to do in our class. It's not where we want to create game objects, we want to do that in our create method. But this is perfect for things like initializing properties that we want to reset when our phaser scene starts. So this method will be invoked each time our phaser scene starts up. So right now our update code works because our update method is going to run for every frame of our game. As long as our key is held down, our number will keep changing. This is why our movement feels continuous. We're not teleporting, we're nudging the position every frame of our game loop. So right now, our player can leave our screen if we keep holding our left or right keys. That's not great. So we're going to clamp our position. If our game object goes too far to the left, we'll stop it. If it goes too far to the right, we'll stop it there as well. To do that, we'll just add code to our update method to keep our player within the bounds of our current game. For that, we're just going to do an if. We'll check our player's position. So if our X value is less than 0, then we want to reset our player's position. And now we'll do the same thing for the right side of our screen. So we're going to do else if our player's X position is greater than the length of our game, then we'll update our position. So now if we save and test, we'll see once we reach to a certain position, we can no longer move our player. So our logic works, but our player is able to still partially go off our screen. We didn't take into account the origin of our game object, and so to fix this, we'll want to update our code to include the width of our game object. So we're going to take our player's X position and we're going to subtract our display width of our game object. Our display width is just how big our game object currently is. And so by dividing by 2, we'll only subtract half of that. So then to keep our game object on our screen, we'll want to reset our X value equal to that. So now if we try moving to our left, once the edge of our jar hits our screen, we no longer leave. So now for our right hand side, we'll want to do the same thing. So we're going to copy this value. So now if our X value plus the half of our width, then we want to take our width and subtract that value. So now if we move to the right, we'll keep our player within the bounds of our game. One quick note, different computers and devices can run at different frame rates. To make our movement consistent, we can use delta time. This just means we can scale our movement based on how much time has passed since the last frame. How this works is in our update method, we'll receive 2 arguments, time and delta. We'll just log those out. So we'll do console.log, we'll have time, and we'll have delta. So now over in our browser, in our developer console, we're going to see our 2 values get logged. So time is the amount of time that has passed since our game loop has first started, and then the second argument, our delta, how long it has been since our last frame ran. One thing to note about Phaser is it automatically smooths out our delta value. So to use our delta, instead of just incrementing by our player speed, we'd want to calculate a new value. So we could do something like const, we'll do move step, will be equal to our player speed. And now we want to multiply it by our delta. We'll divide it by 1,000. So this will allow us to convert our speed from pixels per frame to pixels per second. So then when we update our X value, we'll just want to add or subtract our move step. So one thing we'll notice is our game object moves much slower, and that's because we're dividing our value by 1,000. So now we want to update our player speed to be something like 500 pixels, and now we'll have that nice smooth movement. So you don't need to master this right now, just know that it exists. We'll use it naturally as we keep building. Now we have a controllable player. In our next video, we'll start spawning our falling objects, and this is where the game really starts to feel like a game. When you're ready, move on to the next lesson and we'll keep building.